Okay, so good day everyone. So we are now on our new lesson, supply chain strategy. So this lesson is divided into two parts, so it will require two sessions. So afterwards, we're going to have quiz regarding this subject, supply chain strategy, or this particular lesson for part one and part two. Okay, so let's discuss it more. Wait lang. I just have to uh, okay, so this one is better. Okay. So now what is chain management strategy or SC strategy or supply chain strategy? So of course we have to elaborate it for us to develop a well-rounded understanding of the subject matter. Okay. So in this lesson, we're going to study the following, or the objective would be as follows. So understand the difference of consideration in building and supply chain strategy. Of course, we're just any decision in life, we have to consider certain things or factors that might affect the current business situation and the long-term business situation. So of course, for example, in life, hindi ka bibili ng product because you just like it. You have to consider as well as the cost, the saving, the efficiency, and if the product would really address the solution. So this is quite of course, if it's a day-to-day product or daily use product, we don't think that much. But if we are going to have decisions such as buying car over buying a house, it will take, of course, a considerable amount of time for evaluating your choice, right? Because it's long-term decision. It will affect your current cash flow as a family. And in the long run, it will also affect your living standards, diba? So that's how we decide. So just like your current life right now, business operate in that context. And of course, mas professional sa business because these are, of course, managed by experience and, their main goal is to profit. Okay, so they are really motivated to look not only the present value of their operation, but also to ensure the sustainability of their business. Second is to highlight the importance of internal firm introspection of its product. Of course, there is a saying in Chinese that if you don't know yourself, okay, and you know your enemy, meaning to say you know your customer, the chance of winning a battle is 50-50. Now, likewise, if you know yourself, but you don't know the enemy, or meaning to say the customer, the chance of winning is 50-50. And finally, if you know yourself and you know your enemy, referring to customer, the chance of winning is 100%. So this is from the wisdom of the wisdom or adage of Sun Tzu, the art of war. So it's very important to know yourself, as well as by extension, having this ability to know your customer and how they think, how they feel, and how they perceive your product is, it's a great advantage. Okay, and also in consideration with your raw materials, capability of developing your supply chain strategy. And finally, we're going to adapt the awareness to the market forces. Of course, our strategy is not just shaped by our whims, or not just shaped by our desires or needs and wants natin as a company, but also it should be reactive and reflective of the current market forces that, of course, affects the business operation. So whether we like it or whether we don't like it, whether the business situation is favorable or whether it's not favorable, and currently most business situation right now is not favorable because of the current pandemic and of course the Ukraine war and supply chain disruptions. So of course it might have some issues in our supply chain, right? So currently I'm reading the news right now. So there are issues, some of our well prominent products like the ensaymada of Mary Grace. So they are having some disruptions of their product chain or their supply chain. So these are challenges right now in our era of disruption. So yun po, ano. So we're going to study it. Okay, so let's move forward. Sorry. Okay. So in business, you have this kind of notion. Similarly, during my college days, when I was a student, I also think that business is a competition. So basically, for you to win is you have to knock out your competitor or rival company. For example, if you are to travel agency in the area, you have to make sure that the other travel agency is out of business. If your hotel, my thinking back then is you should be able to capture market share in that area and of course drive the other hotel into bankruptcy. But in reality, that is not how business operate. Now you might be competing or you might have some certain competition in the area, but again, your market is growing. Now, if your market is dying, or mean to say your market or the general consumer base is becoming less and less, of course, the tendency would be your competition would be a very stiff competition. However, most business is on the side that their consumer base is growing. For example, the hospitality industry, the consumer base is growing. Why? Because we attract more tourists coming from or foreign tourists coming from different country. And also our general population nowadays are well affluent and they're well oriented in visiting hotels. Way back then in 90s and 20s, it's quite a luxury for them to visit a hotel, but nowadays it's quite part of their culture of enjoyment. Staycation becomes a very familiar sight. So back then when I was a child, when somebody said, I was going to stay at the hotel, so my general feelings toward that person would be, wow, that's a very affluent person, very rich siya, ganon. So ganon na. But nowadays, hindi na siya ganon. So this thinking that you have to drive or you have to knock out the other competitor is quite unproductive. So right now, the thinking should be as follows. A business is basically a team. So team, you need team. So you are the player. So for example, Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao is the star. It might be the company, but however, the company is supported by different person or stakeholders. For example, he has his promoter, he has his trainer, he has his sparring buddies, he has his colleagues, his kainuman, and those relatives and some spiritual advisors. So this basically shape the context of his success. So likewise in business, ganun din. We have to collaborate with our competitor sometimes because, for example, in our case, that you're overbooked and your hotel is over full. So what you're going to do is you have to endorse your other bookings to another hotel. And of course, that will be very convenient if we have a good relationship with your nearby competitor. So for example, if you're both hotel that operates in the same beach area, so it will be wise to be kind and some sort, you have to form a collaborative partnership with your nearby hotel, okay, or hotel competitor. Kasi at the end of the day, puno siya, baka yung some of their clients na hindi niya ma-accommodate will be transferred to your hotel because hindi nga niya ma-accommodate and it's a big group, no? Ano pag-iwalay-walay nila yon. And luckily, you are just nearby, street away, so you're going to benefit. And the same thing if you're going to have a collaboration with them. So, ganun po yung dapat ang thinking na natin, not the, the poor mentality thinking, okay? So that's how we operate in the industry. So moving forward, our supply chain strategy is assessed or considered by the top management based on the following factors. Number one, it should be the values. What is the value? Of course, the value is represented by our product. That is the physical manifestation of our product. For example, medicine. So the medicine, its value is the effectiveness of its cure because they would want to address a certain problem, particularly a medical problem, to the patient. For our case in hospitality industry, our value is, of course, we are giving care to our guests. Care that they are well taken care of and they feel safe and secure in our facilities, in our hotel. So that's our main value. And of course, it also encompass how do you market that value or how do you price in that value? Of course, the price. If you're a luxury hotel, of course, you give luxury, not just safety and security, but also all the comforts and luxury in life. So that's a perception of luxury. So the strategy, of course, they have to be well flexible based on our previous lessons. The flexibility is way above, okay, way above. The observance of quality service is attentive beyond the point of a normal hotel. So that's the value there. Now, because of that, the supply chain for that hotel, for that luxury hotel, will be, of course, quite complicated because you need to procure some certain products that might be imported, and you need to procure certain services that may be very particular in that kind or type of market. Okay, so may ganun siya. Now, another consideration is, of course, the risk of failure or operation failure, the risk of financial loss, and other risks, or I mean to say the risk refers to the things or conditions that we are not expecting that cause a detrimental effect to the business. So that is what we call risk. And of course, when you consider the risk, you also consider how much you gain or the reward. Reward refers to the things or conditions that we expect and that brought in favorable economic value for the company. So that is the rewards. And lastly, our resources. Okay. So of course, you may want or it's your best intention to provide this kind of service or to provide this kind of product offering. However, if our supply chain or our supplier itself is limited, so how can we produce caviar in Russia? So caviar is imported in Russia, but there are some countries that may localize that production. For example, in Malaysia, they can do caviar, but however, the taste of quality is quite far off from the caviar in Russia. And there are bans in Russia. So I think the practicality of checking your resources or the availability of sourcing your materials should be a priority in shaping your supply chain strategy. Okay, so may mga ganun tayong mga considerations. So we have 1V and 3Rs for supply chain consideration. Later, we will just analyze it again in choosing our supply chain strategy. Let's go back. Let's go forward, sorry. So these are the 7 factors in engaging in partnership. When I say partnership, we're not just talking here with your suppliers or with our colleagues or with our employees, with our we're basically talking or applying this partnership with a different stakeholder of the business, not just the supplier, not just your investor, not just your employees, but also your consumer, your general public, and those things, no? So, or those person that might have a certain interest to your business and vice versa. Okay. So the first thing that we consider when we are engaging to any mutually profitable relationship is if that person could add value. For example, what's the purpose why we have suppliers? Suppliers should be reliable, and they could provide the necessary raw materials for our production. So that's the value of our partnership with them. So if they're not reliable, if they cannot provide the materials that we're asking them, so what's the point? What's the value for them to stay in our relationship? You see? So based on that, we could either terminate or reprimand their business conduct to our company. Diba? Next, it improves market access. Again, all of this particularly are very important for your suppliers because they are the partners of our operation. For the case of consumer, okay, improve market access. There are certain consumer groups that allows you to gain additional consumer base. For example, if we could hit, or let's say a pharmaceutical company could dominate or could solicit the goodwill for doctors. Of course, the doctors recommends the drug for their patient. Of course, matic or there's a big tendency for them to earn a lot because through the referral system, di ba? So kaya nga mga medre pinupuntahan doktor, hindi yung mga kliyente or hindi yung mga pasyente kasi wala naman silang alam eh. So susunod lang sila sa recommendation ni doctor, di ba? Ganun siya. For the hotel, ganun din tayo. There are certain groups that we have to cater in. For example, there are some hotels or resort that invites bloggers. So they take care of the bloggers. So of course, in return, so yung mga bloggers nagpo-promote sila, either paid or unpaid dun sa kanilang facilities, di ba? So that it improves their market access. Next, strengthening operation. So, will this supplier improves my operation by 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 means of offering quality or acceptable products or raw materials? So yun siya, di ba? Next, technological strength. So for example, one of the most often neglected partnership is yung sa banks, no? Sa banks. Kasi akala natin banks are just ano lang, no? Parang bangko lang. Banks is an important supplier kasi nga they supply fund and also they are important partners in our operation because in case that we cannot provide an extra working capital, we could secure loans to the banks. And having a good and positive relationship with banks are really such a great importance nowadays as you operate your business. Kasi nga, importante tayo maka-develop ng magandang relationship sa kanila. Kasi number one, pwede tayong mangutang. Number two, pwedeng mabilis ang ating proseso. Hindi na natin kailangan maghintay, diba? So mga ganong bagay. Now, of course, these banks also would help us to tap in with the consumer market. So for example, if your bank charges additional fee for credit card transaction, medyo hassle siya, no? So for that, I think you have to be choosy with your bank. Kasi kung hindi siya marunong mag-adapt ng GCash, yung mga electronic cash natin, di ba? So parang sa panahon ngayon, very important na yung mga electronic remittance natin. So yun. So kung ang bangko mo, yung isang bangko ng parang panahon pa ni Mahoma, so parang it will drastically reduce your operation into manual, diba? Hassle. Next, enhance strategic growth. Okay, there are certain suppliers that provides or they bring in the technology and also they also have you could also tap with possible investors. Kaya nga katulad ng bangko kasi may makilala silang mga malaking depositor. So itong mga malaking depositor na to normally baka sila yung mga malaking investors or possible venture capitalists. Okay, that could help us in providing extra fund for our business or partner that will of course open up many opportunity. Next, it shares insights and learning. Yan. So ako sa company namin, very importante ang aming mga supplier because yung aming suppliers sa travel agency ay mga tour operator because they are the tour operator. They know the product very well and each product is location specific. So for example, hindi magaling yung tour operator mo for Korea. So syempre, papalpak ka. Ikaw, by your own, hindi mo alam yung ins and outs sa Korea. So medyo delikado tayo. And also sa MICE namin, MICE segment namin, event segment namin. It's really important for them to have hands-on knowledge dun sa lugar. No? So kami, we are just reliant to their expertise when we are suggesting it with our corporate accounts. No? So ganun siya. And of course, yung tiwala na rin. Okay? And finally, increase financial strengths. If you have a big supplier, example ko dyan would be, let's say you are a restaurant and your supplier is a very big supplier of meat. So let's say Meat Depot. So malaking company Meat Depot or Depot tuloy pa ako na pronunciation. Meat Depot. So pwede ka nalang po utangin for 30 days. No, ang laking bagay no. There is a trade credits tayo, trade terms, no, 30 days. So ibig sabihin, pwede mo na makuha yung product, you will pay after 30 days. So of course that extends your working capital, diba? Kaya nga, diba, sa mga negosyo, tatlong importanteng aspect ang dapat bantayan nyo. Number one, yung capital nyo. Paano kayo makakuha ng capital? Bangko, di ba? So, wala kang pera, pwede ka umutang. Pero syempre, hindi ka po utangan ng bangko, wala kang puhunan doon. So, you have to secure first your capital. So, 3F tayo. Your family, friends, and other fools. Diba? So, yung mga nag-startup ng business, gano'n, doon tayo kumukuha ng pera. Next, yun na, mga financiers. No? So, we had the bank, the venture capitalists that will loan us its liability. And last but not least is your consumers or customer and your suppliers. Kasi you can have a prepaid expense, di ba? Or prepaid product. Let's say, hotel. Ito, notorious yung hotel dito eh. So hotel, di ba, bago ka makapag-check-in sa hotel, bayad na muna. So isipin mo na lang ganito, no? Next 3 weeks ka pa mag-check-in. So for example, nag-book ka May 1, so check-in mo is May 25. So isipin mo na lang, from nagbayad ka ng May 1 hanggang May 25, hawak na nila yung pera mo, binayad na ng GCash yun, at cash talaga siya, nakakuha na ng hotel. So ang dami niyang pwedeng gawin pa sa pera mo from May 1 to May 25. And of course, ito pa matindi, yung supplier mismo, yung supplier ng hotel, let's say mga babayaran niya, 30 days pa sila bago magbayad. So, na-extend ngayon yung cash, di ba? So, yun siya. Kaso yung delikado yung katulad ngayon, pandemic, walang customer. So, wala silang yun nga, working capital masyado. So, nakita na natin yung impact nun. Okay? So, yun. Pero ito sa hotel is a very good business kasi they could ask for a investor, and of course there are many investors willing to invest in hotel because you have the property, you have that asset, the hotel. Creditors, ganun din, they are willing to loan their money because they can see the property, the value of the property is enough to cover the loan. And of course there are many customers who are willing to pay in advance because that's the trend, that's the industry practice. And of course you have your suppliers that willing to loan their product or they're willing to accept your payment after 30 days. Diba? Ang ganda. So of course, pag yan, na-combo mo na siya, very successful business yan. Okay? So ganun po tayo. Ngayon, syempre, dahil kung maliit ka lang, you're newbie, wala kang pangalan, bago ka lang, at of course, yung business mo parang small time, wala kang ganun sa ganung mga financial opportunities. Okay? Kaya nga, importante sa isang negosyo, merong nag-start, you develop good relationship with your customer, with the banks and your suppliers para they could extend credit or they could increase your financial strength. That's what I'm pointing out. Okay, so that's the gist of that. Next. So let's have an example of what I did mention. For example, Jollibee as a equity holder of or shareholder of Jollibee Food Corporation. Very proud that Jollibee has this kind of vision for themselves. No, in the long run, it will improve the value of the company, and of course, that will benefit us as the shareholders. So, for example, Jollibee buys Burger King franchise in the Philippines. So Jollibee is a burger company. No, of course, they are not known for the burger, but more or less the chicken. So, alanganin nga me as a stakeholder or shareholder ng company na yun, I was thinking, ano ba talaga ang Jollibee? Burger company ba siya o chicken? Kasi when I was a kid, I thought it's a burger company. Now, eventually, it fades away and we know Jollibee as more or less chicken. So it really competes with KFC and the likes. No? However, what separates Jollibee with KFC is that Jollibee is a multi-branded product. So for example here, Jollibee is mostly notorious for the chicken, but they are improving the burger profile by acquiring international licenses. Okay, for example, Burger King franchise. So that's Burger King is quite known in US. So sa Philippines, konti pala yung nakakain ng Burger King. And it's quite limited in Manila and nearby provinces or sa mga highly urbanized area lang siya. So wala ka pang makikitang Burger King sa Lawag City. So there are there are vast opportunity for Jollibee to expand or to expand Burger King franchise. May opportunity. And of course, that creates value for the company. Diba? So, ganun siya. Ngayon, sa Jollibee mismo, yung Jollibee franchise, wala na kasi halos lahat na may Jollibee. Diba? Na-saturate na nila. So, kung Jollibee lang asamang value driver ng company, parang it will take a lot of time or baka mabagal yung growth. So, syempre, it's not good for us. Okay? Next. Puro Jollibee example ko. Sensya na. Sorry. Yan. So this one is Jollibee gains 100% of Tim Ho Wan. So Tim Ho Wan is a classic Chinese dim sum restaurant. It's known to dub as the cheapest one-star Michelin star restaurant. So one of their main product is yung mga radish cake, no. So in this strategy, it improves the varieties of products that Jollibee offer. Besides Tim Ho Wan, of course, they have Chowking, which is known for Chinese product. But this one, Tim Ho Wan is much more upper scale. Diba? Parang they also owns yung ating French baker, diba? So parang they are anything to do with the food. So Jollibee Food Corporation is yung kanilang mga products and company that they own. Okay? Ito na siya. So ganun siya. Jollibee started acquiring different companies that improves their general capability, improves their general financial standing, and of course, it improves the general growth of the company. For example, in 1994, they acquired Greenwich, and Greenwich is now becomes a more popular restaurant under the management of Jollibee Food Corporation. And finally, they acquired Chowking. Kasi Chowking, the owners of Chowking is really good. However, they cannot sustain Chowking into a level that it was now. So they decided to sell Chowking to Jollibee. And of course, it's not a mistake. No. And then eventually, Jollibee ventures in China. So they acquire Yonghe King. So that's a Chinese noodle restaurant. And I think they have a challenge in China. So, syempre, ang competition sa China, very stiff, very first yan kasi that's a very big market. That's 1 billion. So, imagine mo na lang every day may kumakain sa yung kalahati ng population ng China. That's a big sum of money, no? And they also acquired a big shop, Red Ribbon, improving the quality of the pastries that we enjoy in their various company line. So, yun yung synergy yung tinatawag, no? Yung pastry, kasi may pizza ka. So, gumagamit ka ng flour. Lahat naman sila gumagamit ng flour into various means, no? Of course, that really improves well when they purchase Red Ribbon. And of course, ang pinaka-classic dyan will be the Mang Inasal. The Mang Inasal really open ups the possible, kasi nung college days ko, talagang favorite ko Mang Inasal. Kaso lang, masyado siyang maraming tao na nababad trip ako. Kaya Jollibee yung kinakain ko. And then Jollibee even attempts to recreate the Mang Inasal flavor. Yung kanyang chicken barbecue. Kaso lang walang, it tastes not that, parang barbecue chicken lang siya, pero wala siyang inasal flavor. So parang people are really lining up with Mang Inasal. Ito naman si Mang Inasal, sinasadya pa nila tapatan si Jollibee. So yung mga position ng mga fast food, no? So when there's Jollibee, there's Mang Inasal. So talaga nababawasan. So what Jollibee did is, of course, they convinced the owner of Mang Inasal, and then of course, eventually they ventured to other business line, and Jollibee acquired the full Mang Inasal. Kasi kung hindi nila acquire, it will become a very threat to their franchise business. And this one is the latest, 2012. I think the latest is when they acquired a US company older than Starbucks. So they have coffee bean and leaf. Coffee bean and leaf. That's they're planning to replicate the Starbucks success, and hopefully sana nga po ma-replicate nila ang success na yan. Okay, that will be a very good news to all of us. Okay. Now, next. So these are some of partnership from the hospitality side. Hindi lang po F&B, no? So for example, Best Western Hotel and Resort, a well-known brand or franchisor or licensor ng kanilang mga brand name under the Best Western Hotel chain is is partnering with Amazon Web Service for their cloud service. Cloud technology na kasi tayo or city, no? So bakit? Kasi yung mga software natin is quite limited to our unit. Now, pag nag-cloud computing ka, yung pinaka-software mo, it's really installed on the internet. So you can access the file of your guests and everything, the data are really put into a very secured server na kahit nasira yung unit mo, you can retrieve it into any computer as long as you have the access codes. So yun. So that's the cloud computing. Parang typically yung ating Google Drive is an example and or ating SharePoint. That's an example of cloud computing, no? Ang difference lang is na-offload nila doon yung Opera or yung operating system ng kanilang hotel. Next. Ito na naman, Jollibee na naman ako. Pasensya na kayo ha. I'm really a fan of Jollibee actually. Very proud ako kasi Jollibee is a global company. Ito, Jollibee acquired Yoshinoya. Yoshinoya is one of my favorite brand of Japanese food. Nasa Japan ako. Siya yung bumuhay sa akin. Kasi quality, cheapness, tapos convenience. Kasi lahat ng train stations sa Japan, they have Yoshinoya. So, bihirang-bihira ka makakita ng train station sa Japan. Siguro sa mga rural areas lang, no? Pero in urban areas in Japan, every station may Yoshinoya. And it tastes really different from Japan to Philippines. Now, the Yoshinoya here in the Philippines is being brought by under the partnership with Jollibee. So you can assure that, of course, they will retain the #1 spot for food business. And by the way, you will ask, bakit ba si Jollibee puro food business yung mga ina-acquire nilang company or binabuy in? Yun din ang tanong ko actually. But I find the logic na Jollibee is banking or pegging with the continuous growth of the Filipinos. Kasi at the end of the day, you will realize, ang Pilipino, kahit naghihirap siya, they will still afford, or there is a psychology for us as Filipino not to afford to eat something good or something pleasant, diba? Ganun siya. Iko-quote ko nga si Aling Bebe, yung nagtitinda ng magic water. Sabi niya, kaya nga ako nag-work dahil gusto ko masarap ang ulam ko. Diba? Ganun yung thinking natin. So, I think Jollibee is backing on that logic na kahit naghihirap ang Pilipino, kakain pa rin siya ng masarap. And one of their products is, yun nga, mga products naman niya is really affordable. Bihira lang naman yung parang deli France or parang high-end product nila. So, and because of that, Jollibee could continues to grow and survive. So I have this kind of feeling. Next is also they're buying with Taiwan bubble tea, milk tea. Okay. So pati milk tea pinatos na, 'di ba? So of course nga naman syempre ilang beses ba kayo mag-milk tea sa isang araw? 2, 3 or isa, 'di ba? Sa isang linggo ilan 5, mga ganun. So imagine niyo kalahating tubo ng Jollibee. So malaking bagay yan, 'di ba? So that's a very good sign for their growth. Next. Ito naman, my favorite. I'm also a stakeholder in this business. Okay. Keepers Holding is under the Pure Gold Group by Alfonso tuloy. By Pure Gold Group under Costco Group siya. Okay. So the Keepers Holding is the one who are distributing the very famous brandy product, a competitor with Emperador. So we call it Alfonso. But they also have the imported product lines that some of you might, of course, you should be able to realize this kasi ito yung mga in-order ng ating mga kliyente sa bar at sa hotel. We have Johnny Walker, Glendevich, Jim Berin, Gin Rome, Mattel, and Pierre. So these are very known brands. And of course, walang hotel, walang bar sa Philippines that they don't have Johnny Walker and Glendevich, and even Absolute Vodka. And of course, our very own favorite, Baileys. Yan. So walang hotel, walang bar na walang ganyang product. Imagine niyo na lang potential. How many hotels are being built even the pandemic? Marami. How many bars, though nag-close yung iba, how many bars are continuously going to be built next 10 years, diba? And if you're the one of the four distributors of this imported liquor products, so ano kayo potential for growth mo? 'Di ba malaki, 'di ba? Kasi nga naman pag nag-import ka dito, isang bote dala-dala mo, wala yan, hindi pwede. Or I mean, mataas ang cost sa'yo. So, what they did is they are specializing with this kind of business. So, it's very, I think that's very lucrative business, no? Kasi yung buyer mo, hindi lang consumer, pati hotel. Let me just pause. Okay. Since the Keepers Holding is a distributor, hindi po sila gumagawa ng sarili niyong alak or liquor. A distributor sila, meaning to say they are the one who are importing these products. So these are well-loved products. So ang challenge lang natin dito is of course to supply or to secure the supply chain. Kasi nga pag may disruption, wala kang product na ibebenta, 'di ba? Another challenge is yung dapat exclusive na ikaw lang yung nagdi-distribute sa buong Pilipinas. Kasi kung marami kayong distributor katulad nung sa Jinro saka sa yung kanilang other brand na mga Korean soju, eh syempre maliit na yung I mean yung opportunity cost sayang siya, hindi mo madodominate yung market. And of course, medyo parang baka mas maganda siguro mag-prioritize ka ng ibang product line kaysa yun. Ganun. So, yun po. Next. Okay. So, our supply chain strategies, no, marami. So, ito kasi siya, there are certain factors that you have to consider when you are crafting your supply chain strategy. Number one, ano ba yung general value ng company? What's our vision, mission, and objective? Number two, what's the business model of the company? Are we going to sell products that are cheap and effective and affordable for all markets? Or are we going to sell products that are premium of quality but premium of price? Kasi syempre, if we're talking here iPhone, Apple, that's premium category. If we're talking here luxury hotel, Okada, we have Nobu, we have Marriott, these are luxury hotels. So their pricing or their room rates is around 10,000 level per night, diba? 10,000 pesos siya per night. So their strategy is quite different when compared with the low-cost provider. For example, Sogo, or if you cannot compare nga Sogo with hotel kasi motel siya. Let's say yung ating mga local hotels, diba? Of course, malayong quality. And of course, you can, ano ba mas okay? China phone or Android or versus Apple phone. Of course, quality matters, 'di ba? Apple phone. Pero syempre, sometimes you're going to ask yourself, ano ba mas okay? Yung mag-iipon ako ng pera pambili ng quality product or kung ano yung afford ko. But sometimes, 'di ba, kung minsan kung ano yung afford mo, practicality, functionality, bumili ka na ng ano, 'di ba? Ng mga ganong cellphone. So ganun siya. So number two is what's your business model? Okay. And last but not the least is you have to consider your supply chain. So for example, we have different products, no? Each product is created using different ingredients or raw materials, no? So some of your raw materials might be sourced abroad and some of that might be produced locally. So you have to identify kasi nga kung abroad siya, iba yung supply chain strategy mo. The strategy is of course to procure by bulk. Hindi ka pwedeng bumili ng patingi-tingi dyan or isang tonelada lang. Dapat mga hundred of tons kasi that would be very what to call this, least efficient kasi nga number one, magpa-process ka pa ng forwarding papers mo, duties and taxes and all the regulations. Or baka dapat mo tanungin, mas okay siguro bumili na lang ako sa local importer kaysa ako mismo mag-import. Kasi may ganun din, di ba? Baka yung quality rin naman is the same tapos mas mura siya kasi he is doing the business for bulk of purchase Ikaw, ang kailangan mo lang naman is, let's say, for your business is around 60 sacks, diba? So, 60 na sako. Eh, siya nag-import siya metric tons. So, syempre, mas malaking cost efficiency pag mas marami kang binibili, mas may discount at mas mura yung shipping cost. Okay. Next is, of course, you have to consider also yung customer mo. Kasi product mo, marami kang product, or for this example, we have one single product, no? One single product lang siya. Oops. Okay. So, balik tayo ha. Oops, masyado siyang pumalik. Okay. For this example, no? So, yun siya, no? Example, dito sa products natin, in distribution channel mo, pwedeng you're selling directly with the customer under e-commerce catalog platform natin. Yung mga Shopee, saka yung other, yung Lazada. So, pwedeng doon ka nagbebenta. Pero dapat iba rin yung supply chain mo doon kasi may iba silang mga processes, 'di ba? So syempre dadaan yung product mo with a third party delivery service, 'di ba? Syempre iba yung dapat mong gawing strategy. Dapat may lead time ka doon. Now, pwede naman sa mga companies ka diretso magbenta, 'di ba? Iba rin yung strategy mo kasi syempre malaki ang orderan to eh. And if you're talaga masipag, meron ka sariling store. And of course, that entails different strategy kasi you have to refurnish the store every week, 'di ba? Para ma-maintain mo yung supply and stocks nila doon or inventory nila. Okay? So, yung supply chain strategy natin, minsan hindi siya isa kasi we have to consider various factors such as our raw materials, the source of the raw materials kasi kung magagaling abroad yan, you have to consider it kasi nga may supply chain disruption. Next is the products and the number of products that we have in a company. Like for example, your products is heat sensitive. For example, if you're selling the imported or yung luxury brand ng chocolate na Royce chocolate, medyo sensitive talaga siya sa heat. So, ginagawa dyan, pag bibili ka, papatungan pa nila ng ice bag yan para ma-maintain temperature. So, hindi siya pwedeng, ordinary lang na way of manufacturing, ordinary way of delivering it, 'di ba? Kasi nga very sensitive yung product. So nakadepende rin siya sa product. And also yung dami rin ng product category mo kasi syempre, 'di ba, it costs you money. Next is the way it taps to your consumer or the way it taps to your buyer. Kasi if you're using digital platform, that's a different supply chain strategy versus corporate supply chain strategy. Bumibiling kumpanya mismo or a retailer, tingi-tingian. Or if you have your own store. So, ganon. Okay? So, next is, okay. So, there are two types of product in the supply chain management. No? So, two types of product in perspective ng supply chain management. Pero other perspectives such as yung operation, financial, marketing, may mga bahala silang category. No? So, kanya-kanyang category. Sa subject ko, supply chain management, dalawang klaseng product lang tayo. Broadly. So we have functional and innovative. So ang pinaka-importante sa atin so far would be functional. Bakit? These functional products are, the demand is quite stable in pattern. So we can easily predict and anticipate the demand. Okay, papasok dyan yung food. Okay, it's very predictive. Yung mga restaurant, hotel, yung hotel stay natin, airlines, yan, papasok dyan. It's also a long life cycle, meaning to say, yung product natin, hindi siya nalalaos basta-basta. For example, malalaos yung recipe, pero yung food, yung restaurant, the way, let's say, Spanish restaurant, siguro namatay na kasi Dr. Jose Rizal, pero dito pa rin, di ba? Sa Pilipinas. Okay. So, ganun, a very long life cycle siya kasi it's a need, not founded in need rather than luxury or parang lang wants kasi founded talaga siya sa need. Next. And of course, since the demand is quite stable in pattern and our product has a long life cycle, meaning to say you are expecting people to continuously purchase or consume your product for the next 20 years. So it's very long life cycle, no? Or more than 20 years pa for some product. For food, is more beyond na yan, beyond. Okay, so we have less forecast error. Of course, ang challenge na lang dito if we have disruptions like the pandemic. Kasi nga, syempre, dine-in, Spanish restaurant. So, syempre, pag, di ba parang, hindi mo ma-feel yung experience, di ba? Pag dining. So, mas gusto mo dine-in pa rin siya kaysa delivery. So, may mga ganun disruptions. Next, innovative is less reliable demand pattern because it's mostly founded in fad or innovations. Kasi, for example, when Apple introduced its touch screen, so it really zooms the demand for touch screen. However, of course, the technology for making touch screen is quite limited, and also the supplies and of course the materials. So, konti lang na produce. And of course, the price is really exorbitant. Okay? Napakamahal. And you know that the touchscreen that was first produced by Apple is no longer used right now. So it's less than 5 years of technological change, no? So ganun lang kadali mag-expire ng mga product pag innovative. Kasi nga, it's really based on technology. And of course, that causes the likelihood of forecast error. And of course, forecast is very important, and our next topic would be centered on demand forecasting or demand projection, kasi nga importante siya when we do the ordering and the inventory management. Okay? So importante siya kasi ayaw naman natin sobra-sobra in-order natin kasi nga baka masira or ma-spoil, diba? Especially for food. Okay. So let's have a comparative pa natin. Okay. So let's compare both the product, no? So mostly lahat ng product natin sa industry, hospitality falls under the functional product. Okay? The product is often have a long life cycle. Its contribution, yung kanilang yung tubo mo ba as in a product is quite little, no? Little lang siya. Kasi nga naman, kahit sabihin mo margin mo for food is around 45%, pero you are going to hire people to do the preparation, you're going to pay taxes, you're going to pay the utilities. So bottom line there is the restaurant earns around 10 to 15%. So medyo mahirap siya kasi, 'di ba? Other costs pa. Sell forecast error yun naman. Hindi naman siya madalas, or we can anticipate the forecast. Okay? So error is quite low. Product markdown is low, and we have to observe stock out rate. Hindi naman tayo madalas na ubusan ng stock because the forecast is really predictive. No? Unlike the innovative products refers to these products that are based on technology. Wala naman tayong ganyan masyado sa industry natin. Okay, so let's go next. Oh, sorry. Okay. Dahil ang product natin is mostly functional, pag sinabi kong functional, these are products that are, we need or has a long life cycle. So ito yung pagkain, clothing, housing, of course hotel is hindi naman siya not necessarily want. Kasi kung nag-abroad ka, kailangan mo yung matutuluyan ka. So it's still a need. Now, hotels and our traditional accommodations are what we call the functional product. Pero yung Airbnb and other, innovative style of doing the accommodation, yun yung medyo innovative kasi they are based on technology. Okay? So medyo iba yung kanilang strategy. Okay. Now, I'm going to concentrate more of the food kasi yung food talaga is a necessity. Wala naman na invento, technology, yung food mo, iniinom mo na lang or nasa capsule na lang siya, diba? So still, we enjoy the food as food, diba? As the way we enjoy the food, diba? Hindi siya naging medicine. Now, for the supply chain strategy natin, so these are the general prescription. So your supply chain strategy should have the following for the functional product. And mostly this is true for food and other consumptive products such as liquor, cigarette, ano pa, yung mga kinokonsume. Okay. Number one, minimal inventory with high inventory rate. So meaning to say we are just allowed to stock in buffer rate at around 10%. And of course, we expect that this product are continuously being replenished within a week. Bakit? Example, restaurant ka. Ang space mo sa restaurant, let's say, ang mahal ng upa ng space sa mall. It costs around 50,000 pesos or 65,000 pesos for a small, small space for yung sa mall, di ba? So 65 to 50,000 na space. Ay ang mga restaurant, malalaking space ang kinakain yan. So ang upahan dyan is 200,000 or 150,000 siya. Kasi nga, malaking space na i-required mo. Tapos, 40% dyan or 50-50, 40-60, depende sa hating nyo ha. So yung kalahati dyan will be dedicated for your kitchen and kalahati will be the dining area. Okay. So, pag nagkaroon ka ng stock room, of course, that will cost money to you because there are a space that is not producing anything. Okay. So, of course, that will be a cost. Okay. So, in business, particularly restaurant operating in malls, we are, ako kasi naka-experience na ako niyan. No? Number one rule dyan is you have to minimize your inventory kasi wala kang paglalagyan. Kasi nga, instead na gawin mo siyang stock room, gawin mo siyang dining area, mas may napoproduce na value for the customer, for the company. Kasi nga, yun ang ating goal dito, kumita. Kasi kung kalahati na ng ating space sa mall, inuupuan nating unit sa mall, ay ginamit na natin sa kitchen, kalahati for dining area. Of course, yung productivity natin, yung kumikitang portion doon sa ating space ay kalahati na lang. Yung kalahati ginagamit natin sa operation. Kaya for your facility layouts and design subject, I think you have to consider also the rent. Kasi kung mahal ang rent, baka mamaya mas maganda siguro yung kitchen nyo, i-off-source nyo na lang siya. Meaning to say you have your cloud kitchen and somebody will going to deliver the food in your shop. And then yung shop nyo meron lang kayong small pantry na taga-init. Diba? So these are some of the strategies that they're doing to reduce the cost. Okay? Kasi nga, and improve profitability. Next, short lead time. Ito po, another problem natin sa industry. Kasi food tayo, no? You know, food or consumption, or they have a best duration. So, for example, yung freshness ng noodles, hindi natin siya pwedeng patagalin ng 24 hours. More than 24 hours, yung noodles mo, soggy. Tapos, ang Chinese noodles natin, normally ginagawa siya on-site every morning. So pag wala na siya, pag tatapon na natin yan, pag wala na, pag more than 24 hours. Kasi nga, iba na yung quality. And of course, that will cost our brand reputation to go to the toilet pag hindi natin inayos yan, di ba? Next. Chosen for cost and quality. Our supplier are chosen for cost and quality. Yung quality sinasabi ko dyan is your minimum acceptable quality ha. Or pwede naman maximum, pero of course, that will cost a lot. So minimum lang. Yung acceptable cost lang for us. Next, the product design strive for performance at minimum cost. So, yung ating mga packaging materials, you see how we package the materials. As much as possible, we want the minimal cost for that. Okay? So, for food design, minimal cost din. And sometimes nga sa Philippines, di ba, hindi na totoo yung design. Kung yung nakita mo sa poster, hindi yun yung nakikita mo sa actual, which is, Filipino way of practice, which should be avoided actually. Sa ibang bansa, kung ano nakita mo sa picture, yun na yun. Okay? So, let's move. Okay. So, ito tayo. So, mga natin, functional product, okay. There are more of the predicted demand because we know how many people we're going to eat in a restaurant based on our historical data and based on the traffic flow ng lugar mo. Or kung wala kang ibang basis, compute mo na lang kung ilan yung mga tao dun sa lugar nyo. Let's say kung nasa school ka, Monday to Friday lang naman may tao sa school mo at of course pandemic pa. So madali mo matrace kung sino yung pumapasok. So that's in that way you can have a very good prediction. Now for innovative product, medyo border sila sa uncertain to unpredicted. So for that sense, you have to allocate more buffer for stock mo or medyo, 'di ba, pag yung product mo, let's say, innovative siya, medyo dapat mas marami kang stock kasi hindi mo alam yung demand. Kasi that's quite a new market. Yeah. So, ganun siya. Next. Okay, so what we like here in our industry, kaya siya madaling iplano, is number one, predictability is really predictable siya. But of course, at the end of the day, we have to also realize flexibility. Again, yung flexibility is it's with the cost. Your process might be flexible, but of course, that will be cost may implication siya. For example, we could substitute butter for margarine and vice versa. And you know, butter is much more expensive, diba? So may cost implication. Or likewise, reverse naman. So substitute niyo yung margarine over butter, and of course, may cost din siya. Hidden cost, no? Kasi yung cost na yan will be yung reputation ninyo. Kasi nga, syempre, iba yung lasa ng margarine sa butter. Though despite different effects or different flavor, di ba? Malalaman pa rin siya. Especially if your customer is well-rounded with the buttery-like taste ng product natin. So, alam nila yan. Okay, next. Okay. The problem with predictability target, normally kaya tayo nagkakamali, and of course that will be expounded in our discussion for demand forecasting next meeting, is are shown in this diagram or our illustration. So on planning natin, if something happens, okay, if a certain black swan event happens, of course that will disarray everything, every plan that we have. So, yung COVID pandemic nga. Another example is yung Taal eruption. Diba? Another example would be the cancellations of a certain, or let's say may nakitang bacteria sa isang product. So, they have to recall the brand. So, these are some products. Problem with regards with the predictability. Next. Okay. So of course, in that sense, we have to manage an alternative or parang substitute supply chain strategy in anticipation with these black swan events. Okay. So black swan events refers to things that we not normally concede. I mean, these are the things that it's considerable, but actually not probable or not within our current consideration of things that might happen. For example ko na lang. Ako, as a human being, hindi ko naiisip na mamatay ako. But, it's probable. It's 'di ba? It's probable. 'Di ba? At the end of the day, you're going to die. 'Di ba? That's probable. Another example of black swan events of both opposite extremes. Number one, if the stock market collapse, and if every stock in the Philippine economy turns to be valueless, wala nang value, as in zero, of course, pulubin na ako, mahirap na ako, diba? So that's the logic there. Or vice versa, if all the stock in the Philippine Stock Exchange have managed to multiply their value by 10, so of course, or by 100 na lang para exaggerated. Siyempre, milyonaryo na ako at hindi ko na kailangan magturo, di ba? Pabanjing-banjing na lang ako. So these are the both extremes of the black swan event. And of course, normally we will not consider this type of extremes in our day-to-day activity kasi you might lose some money but you're not considering all of that. You might gain some money but you're not going to consider that you're going to turn around to be a millionaire in a year or in a day or in a month, diba? So that's how the considerations. So, next. Okay. So ito na lang. Going back with analogy, no? So yung product natin, so these are the product. Yung product natin, two types. We have functional and innovative. Forget about the innovative kasi hindi naman tayo more of technology company. We're more of the service industry, no? So functional talaga tayo. So alamin mo, kasi kung functional ka, ito yung dapat mong gawin. Kasi merong established pattern na siya, tapos yung life cycle ng product mo, it's very long. And therefore, alam mo na yung demand ng kliyente mo. And of course, there are certain consideration because of the perishability of your product, diba? Kasi yung noodles mo naman, hindi mo pwedeng i-imbak yan sa ref, diba? Freezer mo siya, tapos yung restaurant mo is a fine dining restaurant. Hindi pwedeng gano'n, diba? So, dapat may quality. And next consideration would be the raw materials. Raw materials refers to the goods or the ingredient that we use to process our product, diba? Raw materials then. So you have to consider it, the raw materials, besides the product. Again, my example a while ago, there are numbers of consideration in your supply chain, not only the values niyo, not only the possible rewards, not only the possible risks, but also the resources, di ba? Yung resources mo, ito pumapasok dyan yung product, how do you distribute it with your customer, how do you do it, your own processes, and of course, your raw materials, which is your ingredients. Now, for ingredients, there are different types, no, according to the supply chain management. So these are the 4 basic category of goods or what we call your raw materials kasi goods ang tawag nila sa textbook. Okay. So we have this bottleneck materials. So these are very important, bottleneck materials refers to a product that is high, okay, difficult to supply, but low importance, no? So, ano siya? Bakit difficult siya makuha pero less important siya? Okay. Bottleneck materials refers to, for example, mahirap siya i-supply, okay, pero maliit lang impact niya. These are your, for example, for our industry, siguro this refers to your spice. So, spice ninyo, kasi konti lang naman nilalagay niyo. So, yung impact niyo sa dish, hindi naman ganun ka, no? For example, yung mga ating mga adornment, yung ating mga garnish. So, dito pumapasok siya. So, these are bottleneck materials. Next, commodity materials. This is the flour, the rice. So, we requires this most of the time. Most kitchen would require soy sauce, salt, and basic vegetables. So, these are the commodity. So, every day, ginagamit siya. It's easy to procure. And of course, it's not really a source of strategic value. So, chicken, hindi. Madali naman chicken kumuha ng chicken. Yung chicken mo, chicken ko rin. Madali kong magaya yung chicken mo, diba? So, that's commodity material. Next. Direct core or competence. Ito naman yung high, mahirap siya i-supply or mahirap siya i-procure. At the same time, napaka-importante ng kanyang impact sa bottom line. For example, this would be yung mga expensive steaks natin sa steakhouse. Kasi steaks are really priced based on the quality of the meat. Hindi sa gravy, hindi dun sa how it cook. And actually, steaks are not really, hindi siya madalas kino-cook, no? So we have well done, medium done, and done. And pag sanay ka kumain ng steaks, no, sa abroad, ayaw mo na well done kasi nawawala na yung flavor ng meat, no? It's either rare, as in shinare lang siya sa apoy, dugo-dugo yun, or half done or semi-done siya, diba? Yung parang luto yung pinaka-outer coating or outer part ng meat, pero yung loob ng meat is rare. So you have the best of both worlds. So yung meat, it's the core competency kasi yung experience ng guests sa steakhouse, nakadepende siya dun sa quality ng meat. How it was handled, how it's imported, the quality of the feeds of the cow, paano siya kumain, those things. So it's difficult to procure because you need to export it or you need to import it from, let's say, Matsutake mushroom or yung Kobe beef, di ba? Meron tayong Matsutake beef, di ba? And other types of beef, Angus beef, yung mga beef pipa na yan. So yun, mahirap siya kasi galing pa sa abroad yan eh. Of course, there are delays, especially nowadays. Next, we have leverageable materials. So these are materials that are easy to procure but of high strategic importance. Okay. madali siya i-procure pero it changed the gameplay of the business. For food, this is your secret ingredient. Ito yung mga secret ingredient nyo. Kaya nga siya secret kasi hindi alam ng competitor na ketchup pala ang secret ingredient mo. Ha? Ganun, banana ketchup pala. Ha? Kaya ano, di ba mga ganun. So yun siya. For our examples lang ha, sa ating industry. Kasi sa manufacturing may sarili sa may mga sarili sila mga examples dyan. Okay? So that's how we do it in our industry. Okay. So last part na lang po ito before we jump in with the part 2. So hopefully you're still listening and hopefully you're still paying attention because of the quiz. So for supply chain strategy, it should be in synchrony, or I mean in tandem with your organizational structure or organizational strategy rather. So organizational strategy niya, let's say you decided that your product line is around low cost kayo. Kung low cost kayo, so syempre, dapat yung mga product or materials na ginagamit mo, low cost din. And of course, you have to purchase it in the minimum or what they call the minimum viable purchasing price. So meaning to say, pinaka cheap na presyo makukuha mo at the certain level of acceptable quality. Diba? So pansinin yung mga tuwalya ng hotel sa mga 3-star hotel versus the tuwalya ng mga 5-star hotel. Malayo kasi nga syempre yung quality ng 5-star hotel, very particular sila dun sa thickness at fluffiness ng towels over dun sa general use ng tuwalya ng 3-star hotel. Diba? Ganun siya. Okay? Kasi nga it affects how you will manifest the value to your client based on your general quality. Now, hindi naman pwede yung tuwalya ng luxury hotel pang 3-star hotel. Di ba dapat nga mga Armani yun or mga luxury talaga ng mga brand name ng product. Tommy Hilfiger na tuwalya, ganun dapat. Kasi luxury yung pinaproject mo, hindi yung mga ching-chang song-song, di ba? Mga tuwalya na Chinese made, di ba? So that's how we do it. Next is, of course, supply chain management also affects the organization strategy in business level. Example, if you're a luxury hotel, it is expected that your customer service is really proficient. Now, pag 3-star hotel naman, syempre, within acceptable range siya. So, in that sense, walang luxury hotel ang nag-outsource ng other services. Okay, bakit? Let's say, yung call center mo, pwede ba luxury hotel, PLDT yung sasagot? PLDT call center? Syempre, hindi ganun, di ba? Pero kung other hotel ka lang na 3-star hotel or below, pwedeng pwedeng siguro yung mga outsourcing yung pagsagot sa reservation. Pwede na yun, di ba? Kasi within acceptable means of quality na yun. Di ba? So that's how we do it. So these are some examples, no? And even the property itself. Kasi kung luxury hotel ka, mukhang built design model ka. Meaning to say you have to buy a piece of land and then you have to build your hotel, and that's based on your own design. Pero kung 3-star hotel ka and below, mukhang ang model na gagamitin mo is acquired and repurpose. Ganun siya. Meaning to say, meron na siyang building na hindi naman pang hotel to na binili mo and then you repurpose it to become a new hotel. So, redesign. So, normally, ganun ang proseso. Pero hindi ko sinasabing ganun lang ha. Maraming proseso. Pero mga nakikita natin, ganun yung mga pinagdadaanan. Okay? So, that's how we do it. Okay. So, that's all for this part 2, no? So, we will have a that's all for this part 1, and we'll have part 2, which is more elaborating on the macro perspective. Kasi ito, micro perspective, nasa loob tayo ng kumpanya. Yung isa naman, lalabas tayo sa loob ng kumpanya, and we have to face the different factors considering our competitor, suppliers, and consumers natin, or our clients. No? So yun lang for this part 1. Medyo mahaba siya, but again, it's worth a while to listen to this lecture.